Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and this is the latest review in my Pride Month celebration of movie reviews. All throughout the month of June, I will be featuring special guests as we discuss major, landmark, or just inspirational films within the realm of the LGBTQI plus community. Make sure that you're following the Pride Month celebration playlist here on the channel. You're always up to date on the latest videos within the series, as well as videos from last year's series, plus my own solo reviews that I've done here on the channel of the newer release landmark LGBTQ plus films. So today I am joined by my friend Daniel, who will be helping me in reviewing My Own Private Idaho. As always, guests start first here, so take it away, Daniel. Let's hear your thoughts.
Hello, everybody. My name is Daniel, and I gave My Own Private Idaho a B+. My Own Private Idaho, 1991, directed by Gus Van Sant. It's about a wandering youth named Mike, played by River Phoenix, who lives on the street. He does sex work for money, and he's plagued with narcolepsy, which is a condition where, in times of stress, his brain will just make him go to sleep. Usually when this happens, he'll get flashbacks to his mom, who's kind of estranged. He really wants to reconnect with her. Mike's best friend is Scott, played by Keanu Reeves. He is the mayor's son, the rebellious mayor's son, who kind of just wants to live his life in decadence, and his father thinks he's a disappointment, and you kind of know the beats of that story. So the two of them, it's a movie just kind of following their misadventures throughout, I want to say, either a couple days or a couple weeks, maybe even a couple months in their lives. You basically just get to see their adventures, living on the fringes of society, traveling from state to state, cities, countries, etc. There's a section in the movie where Mike and Scott meet up with a group of slummers led by Bob Pigeon. He's played by William Richard, and he's this larger-than-life, kind of grandiose storyteller. He's kind of a fool. At this moment, the movie kind of breaks into this weird play-within-a-play structure, and it's based, actually, off of Shakespeare's Henry IV, Part 1, Part 2, and then Henry V. So Henry IV, there's a plot where it's the strained relationship between a father and a son. So if you want to look at the relationship between the king and the prince in the play, you can compare that to Scott's relationship with his father. And the movie will just kind of break into this sort of quasi-Shakespearean dialogue. You know, characters will walk away from a scene, kind of talk to themselves, and even though there's another character like 50 feet away, they'll still be talking as if nobody can hear them. Very much like a soliloquy. There are some times when other characters will come into the soliloquy, and now it'll be like a dialogue. It could be that they're talking to themselves as different characters. It's really neat. And even in the production and costume design, you look at some of the costumes that the slummers are wearing, you could kind of translate that to a sort of Shakespearean-style dress, that kind of period costume from back in the day. If you like something like Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio, it's not quite as crazy and out there as that, but it definitely brings back those memories. The movie is kind of edited from Mike's point of view, and because he's a narcoleptic, we're in essence a narcoleptic too. He'll pass out, and we'll pass out. And the next scene, we might be in a different city. We'll be next to people who we have never seen and don't know before. And it could be the same day, it could be the next day. There's this kind of loose, fragmented feeling to how Mike is living his life just because he suffers from this condition. And I noticed that that could kind of tie into this notion of memory, how it's broken up, how the flow might be off, how desperately we try to cling to it. There's this idea that memory helps us cling to the truth. So if that changes in any way, shape, or form, that can really wreck us. Because if we can't trust our own memory, our own brain, what can we trust? What is truth? Something I really loved about this one was the color grading. that it's so just richly saturated. It's so vibrant. The greens and the yellows and the pinks everywhere. I really love that in contrast to Mike's flashbacks about his mom, which are kind of shot in this grainier, Super 8 feel. The moments where he's flashing back to his mom, those are the moments of truth. Those are the moments of memory. So I like this contrast between his day-to-day life, which is super weird and saturated and kind of surreal, versus those little pockets of memory that Mike is trying to cling on to, which are a lot more realistic and gritty looking. This is a queer movie, and with that, I found some subtext, but I'm going to go into spoilers. So if y'all want to skip ahead, if you haven't seen the movie, just watch for me waving y'all down to let you know my final thoughts. But otherwise, I'm just going to go into this. The movie ends with a pair of funerals, one for Bob Pigeon and one for Scott's dad. They're taking place at the same time, just across the way. And Scott is attending his dad's funeral. He's back to what his father wanted him to be. He's inherited the wealth. He's in a proper suit and tie. And he's just sitting there looking like devil's advocate Keanu Reeves, who's just fine as hell. Mike is with Bob Pigeon and the Slummers, and they're having their own kind of like hippie sesh funeral. A lot of music, a lot of drums, a lot of dancing. There's Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers acting a fool. The priest for Scott's dad is reading Matthew 6:19 through 20. This is talking about how we shouldn't store treasures in earth because that will ultimately rot away, but instead we should put stock in treasures in heaven, which will never rot away, which are rooted in the Spirit, and will kind of lead us to a more godly life. As he's preaching, the movie intercuts between Scott and Mike, and you can see Scott as a person who is invested in treasures in earth. He's a guy who has sought pleasure in money, in women, in excitement, his entire life, instant gratification, doesn't really care about anybody else truly but his own interest and his own ego. And across the way, you see Mike, who's really suffered a lot. He can't find his mom, his brother's an abusive drunk, his best friend doesn't love him back, and of course there's the narcolepsy. But I think Mike ends up happier than Scott because he's put his store, his treasures, in community. He's found this group of slummers that he now regards as family. And you can use this as kind of like a metaphor for his queer identity and this queer community. It's not about the pleasures of the moment, it's about finding a culture, an identity, a group of people that you can belong to. Whereas Scott kind of uses this identity as a costume to get his sort of material wants. And so I think the movie ends in this sense of a morality play, where it kind of castigates Scott for seeking those quick flash-in-the-pan moments for his egotistical desires, and it praises Mike for finding this community, this culture, and kind of rooting his identity in truth, in family, etc. So I don't know, it's this nice kind of like parable fable at the end. So, final thoughts. This is a movie that it takes a while to deconstruct. I like to call it like a shower movie. You watch the movie, you take a shower, and in the shower that's where you can start to make the connections. It plays with structure, so if you like movies like Pulp Fiction and Memento for how they play with the way they're telling a story, that's kind of neat. If you're a fan of somebody like Jim Jarmusch or Richard Linklater, guys who kind of just put characters in a situation and let the story roll and let them be. You know, you don't need to really follow this rigid, like, beginning, middle, and end. You can kind of just cruise on through this movie. If you like stuff like that, I think this will be definitely your cup of tea. I loved River Phoenix, who is always intense and everything he's in. And you get to see a lot of Keanu Reeves, you know, from the goofball side to the kind of stone-cold icy dude to the sensitive guy. There are just great performances here all around. It's a gorgeous-looking movie. If you love the look of really nice-looking film, this is a movie you can find. I wouldn't say buy it outright. I would definitely give it a rental. You go on Amazon and rent it to kind of figure out if this is your cup of tea. And if it is, then you've got the Criterion collection that you can pick up. So that's my time. Thank you all for watching my little segment. Thank you to Larry for inviting me on to be part of Pride Month. It is an incredible honor. And with that said, Larry, let's take it back to you.
Thank you so much for joining me in this series. I really appreciate your continued friendship and support and allyship. So make sure that you go and you support Daniel. He just broke out onto a solo channel. He once was a part of Half Cocked, and I would love to see so many of you all show him that Pride Month love and go support his channel. So of course, all of Daniel's YouTube as well as social media links are going to be in the description down below. So go follow him, show him the love, show him the support, and make sure to hit that subscribe button for great content from Daniel. So for my review, I had never seen My Own Private Idaho before. This is kind of a cult classic within the LGBTQ plus community. And after seeing it, I totally understand why. It's really highly credited with really kind of kicking off a new wave of queer cinema in the late 80s and early 90s. And I see why. Because honestly, this film just deals with the other a lot. So what I really enjoyed with the film, first of all, are the performances. Keanu Reeves looking like a snack here in this film, as of course any young Keanu Reeves does. But in particular, River Phoenix gives such an amazing performance. I thought he was stellar in this movie. And they have really nice chemistry as well as friends and getting this unrequited love situation going on. It really worked, and I thought that they played off of each other very well. Plus, we're dealing with sex work here, and I think that's really interesting when looking at the scheme of sexual fluidity in particular. Nowadays, they have gay for pay, in particular in porn, and the sex work industry as well, and that was interesting to see kind of how it was perceived and how internalized homophobia, what you were conditioned to believe, what your parents kind of like brought you up teaching you to think, really played a factor in how you self-identified. In particular with Keanu Reeves' character, I thought that internalized homophobia was interesting, and I wish maybe we would have been able to explore it just a bit more. But a film all about male sex workers who sleep with men for money is a novel idea in 2019, nevertheless, when this film came out. And it's a real gritty film. Now, there is a plot line here, but the plot is definitely secondary to just living with these characters. We are on the mission with River Phoenix's character as he kind of traces back his family history in efforts to somewhat get his life back together, but also, most importantly, reconcile to some degree with his father and then ultimately find his mother. But again, that plot is definitely secondary. It's actually not really even introduced until the second half of the film. And it's really just about experiencing this pretty hard life that these kids live as sex workers and what it's like being a part of their little troupe. I think the script is really strong. All of the dialogue is actually fantastic. All of the performances across the board are really strong as well. And as I said before, it really deals with some in-depth, deep, and taboo subjects, and it handles them all with pretty great care. And in saying all of that, this feels real. This never feels like a Hollywoodized version. This feels like it could almost be a documentary if there weren't like directorial flares, or there are moments where we get like a nice little stylistic choice thrown in, like talking magazine covers with our sex workers on them. But otherwise, I mean, it is so gritty and so raw and so real with these people. Sometimes it makes you uncomfortable, sometimes you're laughing. It feels like it could be a documentary. Now, in saying that, my problems with the film are, one, I mentioned it slightly a little bit earlier, is that I do feel it's a little bit disjointed in the story. In the fact that we go from just living into this more mission-based storyline that also ebbs and flows and takes its time, and then we kind of come back around to bring it all full circle. I actually enjoyed the Keanu Reeves River Phoenix like duo the most, like when they were on the road, and I wish we actually would have spent more time in that setting with just the two of them going along and kind of building up to that unrequited love situation. Again, I also wish we would have been able to explore the psyche of denying your bisexuality and what that means to people, and really delve into more of that psyche. I think that's a really interesting subject matter that we've not ever really explored. And again, oftentimes bisexuality is just erased in films. We get so many of these gay films that honestly depict bisexuals, but they're still categorized as gay only. They're not categorized as a bisexual film. I think this film opened the door perfectly for that and really could have discussed it and delved into it, but we kind of just glaze over it. But honestly, this film is a gut punch. I think it is a really actually sad and somber film. It ends on kind of a wonderfully sad note to me that I loved. So just be prepared there. And I actually think this is a pretty stellar movie. It does move slowly. There isn't a driving plot throughout, so just be warned in that aspect. But honestly, if you're into indie cinema, I say you got to seek this one out and check it out this Pride Month. So thank you once again, Daniel, for joining me in talking about My Own Private Idaho. Everybody make sure that you head over and you support Daniel's content. He's a wonderful creator and deserves more subscribers. So head over there, subscribe, and show that Pride love. And if you liked this video and you are enjoying this Pride Month celebration, make sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel so you are always up to date on our latest videos. Also, join in on the discussion. Have you seen My Own Private Idaho? And if you have, let me know your thoughts either in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter. I love you all so much for continued support. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!